compute. Okay. So today is session 8 of semester 1 of our course on graded fusion category. So last week we got only one session because the Friday was holiday. Last week we started a subsection called integral and weakly integral fusion categories. We did a lot of things regarding that. We finished with this corollary. Any fusion subcategory of a weakly integral fusion category is itself weakly integral. Okay, so it's the proof follow from what we did before. So that's okay. So next proposition. (21). So what is this about? Okay, so this one is very useful. This one is saying that if you have a faithful, so we mentioned the notion of grading for a fusion category by a group, by a finite group. But if the grading is faithful, then we get the following result regarding the Frobenius bound dimension. In some sense, every component of the grading has the same Frobenius bound dimension. If a fusion category C is faithfully graded by a finite group G, then the Frobenius bound dimension of the fusion category C equals the order of the group times the Frobenius bound dimension of the neutral component of the grading, where C1C is the trivial or neutral component, as you like. Maybe neutral component is better, of the grading. In fact, as I said, all the components have the same Frobenius bound dimension equal to that. And you have order of G many components because it's faithful. No, yeah, so faithful means you can have I forgot the meaning of faithful. All the components are non-zero for all. All this one are different from zero for all G, if I'm not mistaken. So they are all non-zero. In fact, they are all the same Frobenius bound dimension equal to that. So the global Frobenius bound dimension is just the Frobenius bound dimension of one component times the number of components. So you choose the neutral component. You can take any component. Okay. So we will not prove that. Again, this is already known before the paper we are covering. This follow from, but in fact we covered the proof of that in the previous semester course about Bernstein theory on hypergroup. We provided maybe a generalization of that for hypergroup. Otherwise, you can go to the Annals paper of Pettigrew-Nitzsche-Strick theorem 8.20. Okay. And later in the class, maybe next semester, I'm not sure, up to where we can go this semester, Later we will prove an analogous. So here it's about Frobenius span dimension, but you can get something similar for the categorical dimension. Remember that they are not the same in general. They are the same in the pseudo-unitary case by definition. Later we will prove an analogous result for categorical dimension. That will be corollary 428 later. Okay. Oh, so now we will combine the little few results we got recently to get a new result which is interesting, saying that a weakly integral fusion category with odd Frobenius span dimension is always integral. So remember the difference between weakly integral and integral. Weakly integral means the global Frobenius span dimension is an integer, whereas integral means the Frobenius span dimension of each object, if simple object is an integer. And we mentioned example of weakly integral of fusion category, which are properly weakly integral. They are weakly integral, but not integral. For example, the Ising category. But in fact, this corollary is saying that this cannot happen in the odd dimensional case. The odd dimensional case, it's always integral. And in fact, last semester, we also proved that for the perfect case also, it's always integral. In particular, the simple case, non-pointed simple case. Yeah, simple case, because pointed is integral. Okay, so let me write that. So by combining proposition 221. So proposition 221, only this one. You have this grading, faithful grading, and you have this result, this identity for the Frobenius span dimension, okay? With proposition 218.3. So what was that? Okay, so you have the this grading defined this way. So to a simple object, you map to the square of the Frobenius span dimension. The image of that, in fact, in this quotient. Remember, this grading is non-trivial. So yeah, non-trivial in the integral case. Okay. Use that and that. So I guess if you want to get something faithful, you don't consider the full group here, but just the image. Yeah. So the group generated by this image. Otherwise, it cannot be faithful because this group is infinite. Okay, so if you combine that and that, okay. And you use a very important thing is that this group is a two group. So is it finite? It's a two group in the sense that every element here is of order 2. Why? Because you quotient by the square element. So you have this square is equal to that, which is equal to 0. Because you quotient everything which is square. So every square in this group, every square in this group is equal to the neutral element. So not 0, but you should say 1 because it is multiplicative. So you use that, and also the fact that it is a two group, and you get that in the odd dimensional case. Okay, so let me write that, and then we will think why it is true. And using the fact that any finite group, finite subgroup of, so the image I was talking about was generated by is a finite subgroup of that square. So this every finite subgroup here is always a two group. Is a two group. Is a two group. So it's more than the two group. Yeah, in fact, it's two group mean it's any subgroup is a group of. So two group mean. But in fact, it's more than that. If I'm not mistaken. So notion of two group mean of order 2 power n. So that's true. But you have more than that. More, in fact, we have more because for all finite subgroup G, say G, all J in G. So the class for all A, no, not like that. Sorry. Written as a class of this quotient for all A in G, this is like that, which is 1 because we quotient by the squares. So every element in G, every non-trivial element in G has order 2. Particular by the Cauchy theorem. The group is of order 2 power n. Because remember Cauchy theorem. So this implied by Cauchy theorem. If you have if a prime P divides the order of a group, then there is an element of order P. So because every element is of order 2, you have that. So now, how? So we have that. Because of that, we obtain, and we will think about that, why it is true. So because of that, we obtain the following result, which was already mentioned in Gelaki-Nikšić 2008. So what we wrote above is a proof. I will explain a little bit more. A weakly integral fusion category with odd Frobenius-Perron dimension is integral. So what do we need to show? We need to show that in the odd dimensional case, this grading is trivial. Okay, so So we need the group here to be equal to this to be equal to 1. The group is trivial. So why this is true? So in the odd dimension, so we know that this is odd. Okay, so this is odd. And any subgroup here should be even order, you know? And the group we mentioned, always even, unless it is trivial. So if this is odd and this is odd and this is even, so this is even, unless you have G equal 1. Okay. And this is also an integer because it's a quotient of an integer and an integer. So this is weakly integral. So this is an integer, this is an integer, so the quotient is an integer. So this is an algebraic number, is an algebraic integer which is rational to an integer. Okay. So let me write a proof. So in fact, the proof is contained in what we said before, but let me write some extra argument, what I just said. So let me write this as star by star. Frobenius Perron. C1 equal Frobenius Perron of C divided by the order of G. So this is an integer by weakly integral assumption. This is an integer. So this is in the rational intersection algebraic integer, which is equal to the integer. So this is an integer. So that's okay. And then again by star. So this C is equal to this times this. But so this is odd by assumption. This is equal to 2 power m with m greater than or equal to 0. So m equals 0, because otherwise it will be even. Otherwise, right hand side even. So here, left hand side odd. Okay. This is 2 power m by what we wrote here. Where is it? Here. Double star. By double star. Okay. So, J is trivial group. So, meaning that the grading is trivial. Conclusion. As we wrote somewhere before, where is it? The trivial component is of the green. Yeah, it's written here. The trivial component is an integral because the grading is trivial. But yeah, the trivial component is everything. So maybe we can say by remark 219a by 19a is integral. It must be integral. Okay. Okay, so it's yeah. This was not written in the paper, but it's an immediate consequence of what was written before. I just wrote all the details. But you can do that as an exercise if you prefer. Anyway. Okay. Now, three ways to reformulate the fact that fusion category is integral. Involving the notion of quasi-off algebra and the notion of quasi-fiber functor. And in fact, there is a reconstruction theorem between the two. That's why it's an equivalence between this reformulation. So the following conditions for fusion category C are equivalent. So first is C is integral. Second is, let me write this here. There is a quasi-fiber functor. So which mean there exists a faithful K-linear functor f from C to Vec such that it is tensor up to equivalence for all x, y, and z. So be careful. Here there is a possible confusion. So this is monoidal up to equivalence. So this is a definition of a quasi-fiber functor. To have a faithful K-linear functor to Vec, which is monoidal up to equivalence. To be a fiber functor, so if you want to remove the quasi, to be fiber functor, in fact, you need to say something regarding this equivalence. This equivalence will satisfy some tensor action. So we have this isomorphism x, y should satisfy some commuting diagram. So, and then it will be a fiber functor. And by reconstruction theorem, in fact, this is also equivalent to off algebra for fiber functor, quasi-off algebra for quasi-fiber functor. So in general, it is integral. So this is equivalent to integral. So this is the off algebraic formulation of being integral. So this is nice, in fact. In fact, we know example of integral fusion category which are of quasi-integral of algebra which are not of algebra. For example, you can have some integral fusion category of the form. I guess there is an example, if I'm not mistaken, of the form near group. So if you take some there exists an integral near group. In general, near group is not integral, but there exists one easy one, which is integral and which is not which the quasi-fiber functor is not a fiber functor. Anyway, so this is saying So this, let me write it here because I have some room. Quasi fiber functor. Oh no, maybe confusing. I will write below. By definition, by in the definition in Technobook, definition 511, quasi fiber functor. It is a fiber functor when the isomorphism admit tensor axiom, c'est f xy from tensor axiom. So this is, you can refer to this this definition define quasi-fiber functor and fiber functor, and I define this isomorphism with name. Maybe I can write it like that. I don't know if it is a good. Maybe confusing. Yeah, I wrote not G, but not F, but G, because F is for the functor. This is something else. Denoted like that. Denoted in the book. If I'm not mistaken, let me check. 511. Yeah, G for the natural isomorphism, and so I did not specify. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the next reformulation involve, as I said, Hopf algebra and quasi-Hopf algebra. So C is equivalent to a representation category of a quasi-Hopf algebra to the fusion category of finite dimensional representation of a finite dimensional quasi-Hopf algebra. So this is quite nice general result, in fact. And you can go from one to the other by reconstruction theorem. Quasi reconstruction theorem pour quasi-fiber functor, quasi-Hopf. So is EGNO 15. theorem, and you can also have fiber functor equivalent to op. So I forgot which one. The one I cited is for quasi-op for op. 5, 13, 7. 5, 13, 7. This one is for quasi. Otherwise, in general, for just for op, it should be for sorry, wait a minute, let me get it. No. Attends. For finite tensor category. Yeah, so the reconstruction is for finite tensor category. So quasi-op plus finite tensor. It's a little bit more general. Finite tensor category. Of course, the off algebra, yeah, the off algebra in general may not be so simple, but if it is a representation category of equivalent to a fusion category, then it is semi-simple. So in general, you have something much more general without assuming semi-simple. But in the proposition stated here, it's restricted to the semi-simple case. But in fact, it is true without semi-simple assumption. For quasi-op, or more specifically to op is theorem 5, 3, 12. Okay, so we will write a remark soon saying that in the theorem, in this proposition, the off algebra H must be semi-simple. But the reconstruction theorem in general do not take this assumption. Okay. So more generally. More generally without semi-simple assumption. And so integral finite tensor category with quasi-fiber functor. In fact, the existence of a quasi-fiber functor implies integral. It is equivalent to integral. Yeah, this is what we said in this. Okay. Even for without semi-simple assumption, I wanted to say. So if C satisfy this condition, so integral condition or quasi-fiber functor or quasi-off algebra, then the Frobenius point dimension of an object in the category is nothing but the dimension of the image by the fiber functor, dimension over K. In particular, you get that the global Frobenius point dimension of the category is nothing but the dimension of the quasi-off algebra. Okay. So you can find the proof. So in Egg Notebook, it is without assuming semi-simple, so it's more general. But in the previous paper, so 10 years before the Egg Notebook, so Anna's Egg Notebook, Theorem 833, I guess it's proved only for fusion, so only in the semi-simple case. I guess, because the paper is called on fusion category. So I don't think they prove something without semi-simple assumption. Theorem 833 and see example, not their example, but our example. To 8. We mention example 2.8. Where is it? Very far, yeah. Example 2.8, we wrote, let H be a five-dimensional simple of algebra. We consider the fusion category of representation. The standard dimension, correspond to the problems for one dimension by uniqueness. So we also mentioned that. See also example 2.8 for OP. So example 2.8 involves OP, not quasi-OP, but okay. Okay, so that's the remark I said about semi-simplicity. Note that the algebra H in proposition 223 here is very simple. Is automatically semi-simple. Since the category C is assumed is fusion, so semi-simple. Okay, and we need also to if you want to be very strict, you need to see plus rep H semi-simple if only if H semi-simple. Okay. Okay. Now, well, that's okay. So before the pause, may state another corollary. So so in the weakly integral case, so we already mentioned that weakly integral implies spherical, but in fact, it's positive. There is a unique positive structure. So by combining proposition 216 and 218 with formula 10. Let me check that. 216, 218. So 216 is saying that a phi pseudo-unitary fusion category has a unique phi positive spherical structure. And you have that. 218 is saying that weakly integral imply pseudo-unitary. And 10 we already mentioned. So we get the following automatically. Corollary. Or maybe after the pause, I don't know. Time. Corollary to 24. So after the pause. Five-minute pause. Okay, so we can state the immediate consequence of this proposition 216, 218, and formula 10. So a weakly integral fusion category has a unique phi positive spherical structure for each field embedding phi from this field of cyclotomic real to the real. Remember that this is the analog of the real cyclotomic in this field, which may not be the complex field, to the real. And so for this structure, we recover the Frobenius power dimension. We have d of x equal, I guess in the paper they forgot to write phi here. But in fact, with the next remark, the next remark is saying that in fact, in the integral case, this phi, this is independent of the choice of the phi. Maybe not for the weakly integral case, but for the integral case is independent. Integral fusion category. Concept of phi positive does not, yeah. In the integral case, all the Galois conjugate are, the Galois conjugation is the identity. Does not depend on phi. Since Galois conjugation since the Galois automorphism restrict, since the integer an integer is invariant by Galois automorphism. An integer is always invariant by Galois automorphisms. Hence, we can simply write positive instead of phi positive. We can simply use the term positive instead of phi positive. And if you are in the complex field, I guess, sorry, I am not mistaken, but so for in the integral case for any field of characteristic 0 algebraically closed, in the integral case, you don't need that. But if you fix the field to be C, I guess you also don't need that. Because you have the restriction, you have C of that is equal to that directly. So it's equal to the explicitly to the real cyclotomic number. So it should be okay. So I am not so so if what I say is correct, then this kind of thing is only when you are considering algebraic closed field of characteristic 0, which is not the complex field, but maybe some CP or something, I don't know, or some field of function. But I don't even sure if it makes sense to consider that. Most of the time it's over C. So, but anyway, this is a kind of decoration which is not so complicated. But I'm not sure it's really relevant to any. Okay, so hence we can simply use the term positive instead of phi positive. So the corresponding homomorphism D from the Grothendieck ring to the integer associated to positive spherical structure is just a Frobenius point dimension. So this is immediate associated with positive spherical structure is equal to the Frobenius current dimension between the Grothendieck ring to C. So it's immediate. You can say okay, in fact, you can say it's immediate by uniqueness in the Frobenius current theorem, or you can say it's immediate by this corollary. In fact, you already have that. So, okay. Okay, so the next, we will talk about an example in which it's very easy to get the spherical structure, which is positive. So it is in the integral case, in the pointed case. Sorry. So in the pointed case, we will define in great detail the spherical structure, and you will see it's quite easy, not so complicated. So let's see, be a pointed fusion category. So meaning, so pointed means that the Frobenius parent dimension of any simple object is equal to 1. Okay. So it is integral. So all the Frobenius parent dimension of object is integer. 1 on the simple case is integral. And the positive spherical structure mentioned before can be described as follows. And the positive spherical structure from the previous remark can be easily described as follows. So you take a simple object. So the simple objects in the pointed case are by definition all invertible. Invertible means the tensor product of the object with its dual is equal to isomorphic to the unit. For n, but what I am just writing just now work for any invertible object in the fusion category. So by definition, X invertible means that X tensor X star is isomorphic to 1 isomorphic to 1 is enough. You don't need, but it's also like that. I guess you can deduce the right hand side from the left hand side, which is equivalent to the Frobenius parent dimension of X equal 1. Okay. So for any simple object in the pointed part, or for any simple object if the category itself is pointed. So the map, so you have the co-evaluation map from the unit to X tensor X star. Because X tensor X star is isomorphic to 1. This map is an isomorphism. So this map is non-zero. So it's an isomorphism, since this is isomorphic to 1. This is an isomorphism, so it is itself invertible. So you can invert the co-evaluation in this very specific case. Of course, we cannot do that for a simple object which is not invertible. For invertible object, you can invert the co-evaluation map, and you can use it to define a map from X to X double star, which we use for spherical structure. Define oh wait, I forgot. So this is an isomorphism. Again, you need to say that because it is non-zero. It's a non-zero isomorphism between 1 and itself, so it's an isomorphism. And therefore, invertible. Since X is different from Z. Vertical. So now, to define the map from X to X double star, as follow. As follow. You start from X. You apply identity of X and the co-evaluation map of X star. You get X tensor X star tensor X double star. And then you apply the inverse of the co-evaluation map in X tensor the identity of X double star. And you get X double star alone. So pictorially, you get like that. So you start by identity of X and then co-evaluation of X star. So here is X star, X double star. And then the inverse of the co-evaluation. So here it is co-ev X inverse. Here is co-ev X star. And be careful. It is different from the evaluation map from X star. Because in fact, here it's from X star tensor X to 1. Here it's from X tensor X star to 1. So this is not the same thing. So it's not a zigzag relation. Be careful. Zigzag relation, you start from X, you finish with X. Here you start from X, and you finish with X double star. So you get, okay, this map. So it follows that this map is monoidal. Really monoidal. You follow that. So if you have that like that, for all simple elements. Pictorially, you can see as follow. You have X, Y, and you do the same picture as before. X and Y. X, Y. This is equal to X and Y. And you have co-ev of X tensor Y should be like that. X, Y. So I leave to check that as an exercise. So I just wrote that in my notes. So you have to check that this is enough. You have to check that this is true. So check that this is true and enough to get, then this is that, this is that, this is that. So double check that. Double check. Double check as an exercise. Okay. Okay, now this delta is defined on the simple object. But you can extend it by linearity to define a pivotal structure for all objects. So extend delta to C by linearity. Define extending. So define a pivotal structure on C. And as an exercise, you can verify that in this case, the categorical dimension is equal to 1. One can verify that under this structure, dim x equal 1 for all simple so exercise. So it should be more or less trivial using the pictorially maybe. Not sure. Anyway, exercise. Which confirm that in the positive spherical structure, so this confirms that this is a positive spherical structure mentioned before because it is equal to the Frobenius point dimension. It gives a Frobenius point dimension, so which confirm that this is the positive. So remember that the pivotal structure is completely determined by the value of the categorical dimension. So because here it is exactly the Frobenius point dimension, you get that this is exactly the positive thing as mentioned here. There is no choice. So which confirm that this is a positive spherical structure from before results of corollary 224 and remark 225. Okay. Okay. So now we will start a new subsection called braided fusion category and non-degeneracy, in which we will, as a first subsection, introduce the notion of S-tilde matrix. So the notion of S matrix generalized to without spherical structure. So this S-tilde matrix, as we will write soon, was suggested by Pavel Etingov. So Pavel Etingov was not the co-author of the paper we are covering, but at least he suggested this definition. Braided fusion categories non-degeneracy. Degeneracy 281. S-tilde matrix of a braided fusion category. Okay. Okay. So we did not talk about braiding before? No. So we talked about braiding in the introduction, of course, but we did not talk about braiding in section 2. Okay. So this is where we introduce we call the what is a braided tensor category. Recall that braided tensor category C. So let me use this color also. Oh no, this one or this one. So is a tensor category equipped with a natural isomorphism, a braiding, as usual. So is a tensor category equipped with a natural isomorphism Cxy x tensor y to y plus x depicted as usual like that. X, y, y, x, which satisfy. So this natural isomorphism satisfies the hexagon action. I will not recall. But the hexagon action is saying that, in fact, grossly speaking, hexagon axiom is saying that this pictorial representation of the braiding is makes sense in the sense that if you have a pictorial thing when you have a lot of things like that. Let me see. You can move the string accordingly. For example, if you have so this is exactly the hexagon axiom. The hexagon axiom saying that you have a big pictorial proof or big picture with such string, with such braiding. You can move the string according. Here it's a string which is above, and this one is below. So if you have, for example, if you have something like that, yeah, you do like that, and then something like, wait. Like that. Then this is like that. For example, etc. You have a lot of axiom like that. In fact, it reduced to 3. Maybe you can reduce to 3 axiom, which are enough to deduce everything like that. So of course it is very precise, but it's not the point. So again, the point of this class is not to introduce braided fusion category. The goal of this class is to introduce the core, the notion of core or compensation, etc. for a braided fusion category. So we assume that the people who attend the class already are familiar with the notion, the usual notion of fusion category and braided fusion category. So in particular, the pentagon axiom, hexagon axiom, etc. Otherwise, you can go to the following reference. So, or in my class previous semester ago, several semester ago. So Joyal Street. Uh, 1993. You can go to Bakalov, Kirillov, 2001, and of course, EGNO book, chapter 8. I guess EGNO book chapter 8 would be the easiest reference. What I cover in my class 2 years ago. Okay. So remember that in section 242, we define the left trace and the right trace denoted TR plus, TR minus. Okay. So in section 242, we defined the left and right trace and the corresponding dimension t plus minus of x. For simple object, anyway, for general object. Okay, so remember that we said what happens if you replace the spherical structure of the pivotal structure or any isomorphism, in fact, by if you compose with a tensor automorphism, you remember we said the following. So this depends on a natural isomorph. Like the goal of this subsection is the same as what we did for the square norm. Remember that we said the square norm, so that the categorical dimension depends on the choice of this isomorphism. But there is a way to define a square norm which is independent, because in fact there are some ratio which vanish, and so you get something independent. To define the S matrix without spherical structure, so the Pavelitinghoff suggested some analog thing. So you can define something, and then you will have some something will vanish, so we simplify, and what will rest is independent of the choice. So the same idea. So here, if you replace phi by something composed with an automorphism, so specifically, so here phi is not a spherical structure, be careful. Here phi is just an isomorphism, natural isomorphism, but not a spherical structure. Specifically, replacing phi by phi composed with alpha, where alpha equal alpha x simple, is the identity, is the automorphism of the identity functor. Is an automorphism. Automorphism of the identity functor. of C. So if you make this change, you get the following change for the categorical dimension, as we already mentioned before. Change d plus minus x to like that. D plus minus x. So remember that this is an isomorphism of simple objects, so it's a scalar. So you have this scalar. You replace this categorical dimension by this categorical dimension if you change the natural isomorphism like that. So this was done before. See subsection 2. Okay. So we already did that. So now we have the definition of S-tilde matrix suggested by Pavel Tingoff, which will turn out to be independent of the choice of the natural isomorphism. The following definition was suggested by Pavel Tingoff. Definition. To 27. So let C be a braided fusion category. So define the matrix S tilde equal S tilde xy xy simple isomorphism by the following. So S tilde is equal to, and here we will use a notation we defined before, but don't worry, I will recall the picture. So we use this notation in subsection 242, I guess. Subsection 242. And I will recall the picture. So you apply this map to this y x compose to this composed braiding, and you divide by d minus x d plus y. And this called equation 11. So remember that this notation corresponds to something like that. Remember, we define that. So we have a morphism, but with two objects, and you apply the right trace on the right component like that. So phi y. So the right trace here, but the left trace here. By x inverse, like that. So this is the definition. Oh, maybe I will put this here. Maybe more. Oh. More relevant to write it here. So phi inverse. Okay. expression 2 for 2. So you have that. So now what is the picture if you apply this definition and you have a picture for that, a picture for that, and for that? What do you get? You get the following picture. So this is equal to, pictorially, this is equal to, so you have the double braiding. And then here you have phi x inverse. Here you have phi y. And you close. So here it's x, here it's y. And you divide by phi x inverse phi y. Okay. So because it's a picture, the line may be confusing. It's a division. Pictorially, it may. This is not a categorical thing. So this is a division. It's not a line. This has no categorical interpretation. It's just a division. This symbol is for division. Okay. So this is that. And you see, so you have all, in fact, what depends on phi? There is something depending on phi, which we simplify here. And here, yeah, as we will explain. So it will be independent. So not if we replace phi by phi composed with alpha as described above, both the numerator and the denominator of the expression are multiplied by the same constant. Both the numerator and denominator in this expression are multiplied by alpha inverse x alpha 1 up to some mistake. So you have to check if I did not make a mistake here, but I don't think so. Because here you have the inverse. You have x inverse, so you have the inverse, and here it should be okay. Anyway, so you multiply by that on the numerator and denominator, so it's simplified, and so it's independent. So you get the same number for that and that. So x will remain unchanged. Therefore, this matrix is invariant on the choice of phi. It's really an invariant of the braided fusion category. The matrix S tilde is an invariant of the British Fusion category. Fusion category. Ici. And does not depend, which is more or less the same thing, on the choice. I would prefer to say, because this is does not depend on the choice. Okay, I guess we can stop now. It's time to stop. So see you tomorrow.